As an intro, I'm Ben, and I'm performing this webinar with Mike. Nice to meet everyone. We hope everyone's safe and healthy, working from home right now, dealing with this crisis. We really appreciate the time considering. Just a couple housekeeping items. So all lines are going to be muted. We typically try to answer questions throughout the webinar, but for this webinar, we decided if you could just type your questions into the chat window and we will address each of them during the wrap up at the end of the presentation. And also the webinar is going to be recorded and we will send you that link to the recording afterwards in case you miss anything. So as an agenda of what we're going to cover today, first of all, we felt it was worthwhile having this webinar. First of all, considering we had a lot of customers reaching out with interest. First of all, we have a new version, but also obviously we want to discuss, the COVID-19 crisis, a couple of things that we're handling in that regard and how we're helping both prospects and customers. And so we're going to cover that in the demo. Mike's going to cover that in the demo specifically. And also, actually, we are going to wrap things up with a pilot offer around our crisis management functionality and capabilities that we're offering to both customers and prospects. So if you're interested, please stick around and we'll cover that as well. But in terms of a general agenda for the presentation, we're going to start off with the challenges in the BI industry that we see as endemic in the BI industry that we're solving, right? And how our push intelligence platform solves those challenges. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike for the demo. And then again, we're going to wrap things up with a question and answer period. So beginning with those challenges in the BI industry, if you had to boil it down, the thing we're trying to solve with our push intelligence platform is low user engagement with BI and data in general. Right, so the first thing we like to say is that we see a lot of BI environments working, in every industry with a bunch of different customers, and most BI environments are simply a mess. They really are, right? And because of that messiness, these users, they're not engaging with data or BI generally, right? And there's really three primary reasons that are a result of this messiness as to why they're not engaging. And the first is siloed systems. Right, so typically within organizations, it's a complex data environment, right? They have typically multiple BI tools, a lot of different data sources, just a lot of places for users to be able to go and look, right? So you're essentially playing hide and seek with these users. And when I say users, I'm not talking about the data analyst or the data scientist. I'm talking about the operational business end user, right? Who maybe has 5, maybe 10 minutes a day to engage with their dashboards and reports and somehow draw meaningful insights from them, and they're just not, right? So let's say they do find they somehow locate the correct dashboard or report. These dashboards or reports are typically going to have so many different data points and so many different filter dimensional combinations for them to sift through. It's just information overload, right? There's no way it's practical to think that somebody has the time of day or the know-how to sift through all this information and somehow find the diamonds in the rough, the critical, relevant information. And so in terms of how we solve this problem with our push intelligence platform, so we are a software platform. Again, it's our push intelligence platform. It's a completely system agnostic platform based on an open plugin architecture. So you see a bunch of logos to the left. That's really just a sub list of what we can connect to. The master list is much larger, but it's just to give you an indication that we can connect to just about anything, right? Whether it's BI tools, whether it's underlying relational databases, your operational systems, you name it, we can connect to it. And so once we connect to the appropriate systems within your environment, there's 3 pillars to the platform that allow us to ensure that users are engaging with the right stuff at the right time. And so those are organize, enrich, and distribute. And to get into the specifics of each of those pillars to the platform, starting with organization, when I say organization, we're connecting to everything within your data environment relevant to your users, bringing everything together into a single unified data portal organizing it intuitively based on each user's preferences and interests, and just making it simple for them to find what they're looking for quickly and easily, everything in one place, right? No more logging into multiple systems, no more looking in multiple places. Everything's in one place. It's organized well. They can find what they're looking for quickly and easily, right? And then Mike's going to cover a little more of the specifics around this functionality in terms of certification. You know, maybe as the BI and analytics team, you want to give your users confidence in that what they're looking at is accurate and valid. Security and permissions, global search, things of that nature, Michael will cover as well. And then the second pillar being enriched. So the question invariably becomes for users, once everything's in one place, it looks great, it's organized, they can find stuff quickly and easily, but then they're always going to ask the question, okay, great, everything's in one place, but now how do I know what I should be focusing on, right? What is the relevant critical information right now? And so we help to answer those questions by bubbling to the surface the critical information that a user should be focusing on, right? And so we do that by uncovering anomalies, looking for exceptions, really any significant data changes that they should be made aware of, we're highlighting and bringing to the surface and making sure they're focusing on. And then without question, the third pillar to the platform being distribution. So without question, the most effective way to ensure that your users are engaging with this content is by pushing it to them, right? The pull methodology in BI is dying, and for good cause, right? People are realizing that you can't simply publish a bunch of dashboards and reports and just pray that your users are going to go log in, engage with them, use them in the right way, right? It's critical nowadays to be able to push this content to your users, but push it via the right channel to ensure that they're actually engaging, right? So Metric Insights through our enterprise distribution engine allows you to push this content to your users really via any channel, whatever is appropriate for that particular user and use case, right? So Mike's going to cover our ability to generate custom portal pages, which is essentially a blank canvas that allows you to put whatever content from any source and tool side by side in a customized way as a landing page. Naturally, we can push via email. We can send alerts to your users in various ways. And we also have a mobile application on the iOS and Android platforms. And finally, we have integration with collaboration tools, which are becoming more and more popular, tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams. And so that's it from me. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to Mike for the demo.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Can I just check you're hearing me okay, Ben?
I can hear you perfectly.
Great. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Again, add my welcome and thank you for joining us during this pretty crazy week of things that are going on. Thanks, Ben, for the overview. So I'm going to take you through essentially a demo of what Ben was just talking about, you know, as it relates to those three pillars of the platform. And I saw a couple of questions come in already. I'll try and address some of those as we go through, and we'll revisit them at the end. As Ben said, it's a little challenging us running these webinars remote, being able to track questions and demo at the same time, but we will get to them, don't worry. So what I have here, you're looking at my browser window. We have an instance of Metric Insights running that is connected to a number of different data sources that Ben was mentioning. So BI tools, I saw a question around, do we connect to Power BI? We do, and we can touch on the details of some of that, but essentially connected to BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, Click. We're connected to a couple of databases. You'll see what we do there, and some operational systems like I have a connection out to Salesforce in this particular instance. And so when you spin up Metric Insights, the first thing we're trying to solve is this organizational aspect of content, where we want to be able to catalog content from all these different tools into a single place for our users. So what you're seeing here is each of these tiles within the middle of the screen here And I'm logged in as an admin to our catalog view, if you like, our library view. Each of these tiles is linked to a particular data source and a particular piece of content that we want to publish from that data source. And the tiles really fall into a number of different types that I'll just touch on, so that you have some context for the rest of the demo. The first type is where we're connecting to a BI tool like Power BI or Tableau, or a legacy tool like Business Objects. It's a tool where you've built visualizations in the form of dashboards and reports in that tool, and you want to make them available to your users through this portal view that we're looking at. And so an example might be Tableau. So we have a Tableau sales dashboard here. If I click on that tile, effectively what our plugin does in this case is a number of things. It allows us to publish content through these tiles. It picks up an image of what the dashboard looks like each time the tile updates, so that we can use that for previews like you're looking at here, but also in emails, as you'll see later. And if I drill through into that tile, effectively what we're doing then is passing my credentials through to the underlying tool, in this case Tableau, and I get access to the full functional dashboard embedded in metric insights. And so, as a user, I didn't have to know necessarily that this was a Tableau dashboard. I'm just linking through to this particular asset. And whether that's Tableau, whether that's Power BI that we're doing that for, whether that's ClickSense, ClickView, again, as I link through, I'm just going through to the underlying tool that has. So that is the first type of tile where you want to catalog existing content that you've built. I mentioned again, we can also bring in data to the platform. So oftentimes we find that customers are building complex dashboards and analysis in these tools like Tableau and Power BI, but sometimes they just have really simple reporting requirements as well, that they may be using Excel or some legacy tool for right now. In Metric Insights, you can snapshot data from any of our plugins and visualize it directly within Metric Insights. So this is a report tile where we simply want some simple charts and graphs and tables, potentially filtered by some dimensional values. And these reports are very quick to create. I just write the queries, it starts snapshotting the data, and I can publish these alongside my other dashboards as well. The third type of tile that we'll talk about as we go through the demo is what we call metric tiles. And they're identifiable by these tiles that have numbers on them. And metrics are essentially the high-level KPIs or indicators that you perhaps want to make available to your users, bubble up those high-level indicators to your users. And metrics are essentially time series data. So something like daily sales, like I have here, where we're sourcing data from a particular plugin or data source. Could be a BI report, could be a database, but we want to track a time series piece of data. It could be every minute, every hour, every day. And you'll see as we go through the demo, that might be dimensioned by different areas of the business. But essentially, we're analyzing how those metrics are changing over time. And we can use that to provide indicators to the users through traffic lighting, alerting, different ways to point them to what's going on in the data and which dashboards they might want to focus on. And we'll come back to that in the demo and look at it in more detail. So the first part of Metric Insights when we set it up is connecting to your data sources, is starting to catalog this different content from these different sources. Through the plugins, we pick up an element of metadata around what these things are called, potentially even filter values that exist in these dashboards. We can layer on additional metadata in Metric Insights in the form of things like tagging. And essentially, you can organize this content into a category structure that makes sense for your organization down on the left-hand side here. Again, across data source, organizing things in a way that makes sense for your users. And I'm obviously logged in as an admin here with access to everything, but even in this case, we then have this sort of search paradigm, similar to sort of a Google search paradigm, where I can start to search across my body of content. It suggests common search terms that are being looked for and potentially top hitting assets down the bottom. But if I run that search, it's again essentially going across the different data sources, looking at the metadata that we've captured, bringing back search results and ranking those in terms of what's most likely to be what I'm looking for. And so users can come into this single place and search across their content and find what's available. Now, obviously, there's a security and permissions aspect to this catalog that we're looking at here. And typically, we sync up with your security models, whether that's Active Directory, LDAP, where we can essentially define what users have access to. So within Metric Insights, there is a user group paradigm that syncs up with your security model. I actually have another browser window opened here where I'm logged in as a different user, Avery, and typically my security dictates, what categories of content I will have access to, which tiles within those categories potentially I have access to, and even down to sort of a slice of data within those tiles, whether it's slicing metrics, in this case to a particular region, or even my dashboards. If I open that Tableau dashboard that we were looking at before, there's the ability to sort of map these users to slices of data. So in this case, I'm responsible for Canada. When I open this dashboard, it can pre-filter it to that particular bookmarked set of filter values and bring me into the dashboard right at the place where I need to focus my attention. So again, step one is get everything into this single portal for your users, allow them to search for content, allow them to find content, not have to worry about the source system that it exists in. The second piece then is, as Ben mentioned, even if you sort of get all this content into one place, users don't want to have to come and search for everything and track everything every day. So we have various ways of distributing content, pushing content out to people, publishing content, again, data source independently. And that can be either from a sort of self-service perspective, so in allowing users to choose what they are interested in this catalog and be notified of, or it can be on behalf of your users. And we'll look at a couple of examples of both. As a user of the portal, I can choose to create what we call favorites folders, and these are personal to me. By dragging a tile or clicking on a star, I can create a set of favorite tiles that obviously provides me a shortcut to those tiles, but also tells Metric Insights to effectively start tracking this content on my behalf and doing things like sending me a digest email every day that summarizes what's changing within my favorites folder. So in this case, I've selected some tiles. I've chosen to receive a daily email. These emails are template based. They can look and feel any which way you want, but the sort of things that it might include is, which of my metrics have changed the most since I last received the email? Have any metrics generated, unusual values, be it good or bad? Did any dashboards update since I last received this email? And if so, pick up an image of what the dashboard looked like after it updated, again, potentially pre-filtered to my slice of data. And again, across tools, regardless of where these dashboards exist or Metric Insights or third-party tools, give me a summary in a single email of what I'm interested in, what's changed. And oftentimes we won't send everything all the time. We just want to know, again, what's changed. If this dashboard is just updating once a week, send it to me the day after it updates or the time, right after it updates. So again, the intention is to keep users focused, focus them on what's important, what's changing, and keep them targeted in that way. And obviously, all these things that we're looking at in here, whether it's metrics or dashboards, hyperlink back to that piece of content if I want to go and look at things in more detail. Another way of simply self-servicing on this content is if I'm looking at a particular dashboard or report or metric, whether it's in the preview or in the viewer, I can click on the envelope for any of these pieces of content. I can subscribe to receive them simply by checking them. This will then add it into sort of my regular digest that I receive. If I have bookmarks set up, I could choose to receive an image for each of my bookmarks or just a standard image. That will simply then add it into, in this case, my daily report. And so again, it's a way of just sort of simply adding things into a distribution, a subscription, again, data source independent, could be things from multiple different data sources into that single email. So that's a couple of examples of sort of self-service subscribing to content. Obviously, as well, we can push content out to users that we're responsible for, if you like. And so we have this folder concept as well. Folders are different to favorites in that I can share them with other users. And so again, by dragging tiles, I can add them to folders. And folders can be what we call burst out to users. Think of it as a distribution. A burst contains different tiles that we're interested in. It goes out on a particular schedule, and you can create your own schedules that make sense for you. They can even be sort of dependent on data being available, that sort of thing. But I can create a schedule or a dependency, and I can send that out via, in this case, an email with a particular email template. I can customize that email in a way that makes sense for what I'm sending out. But in this case, I can subscribe users to this particular email, this particular burst. So whether that's everyone who I've shared the folder with or people that I want to add to this subscription, they will start receiving it on the schedule that we put in place. So that's really sending content, that exists in the portal, typically schedule based. Another way to think about this, and this is really the third pillar that Ben was touching on, is this ability to sort of send content or uncover anomalies and exceptions in content, and only send things or alert users when we find unusual values in the data. And so we looked briefly at the metric tiles earlier. This is one way we can do this. So a metric tile like this one we have here, as I mentioned before, can be sourced from any of our plugins. So conceivably, this could be coming from a Power BI dashboard or data set. It could be coming from a Tableau workbook. It could be coming from a database that sources those things. If I click into this again, a metric is a time series piece of data that I mentioned before. We're incrementally loading values across different dimensions of the business, for example. And as we load values into the platform, we're actually tracking how they're changing over time. So we're not just bringing in the value, we're running some basic analysis against it to look at sort of moving averages, highs and lows in the data. We're actually running a basic statistical analysis against this time series to look for outliers that are highs or lows based on a number of standard deviations from the moving average. And these outliers are things that I can alert users to and point them to issues in the data. We'll look in a minute. I can obviously, let's look now, I can obviously create new alert rules as well on top of these time series. So by using the wizard, I can create, whether it's measuring things against fixed values or targets or looking back historically, I can start to create alert rules that start to look for events in the data. So above or below the average for all the days of the week for the last sort of 1 month, for example. And I can choose to, I can build up these alert rules and then potentially sort of simulate them again against historical data. So how many times would this alert have fired across, within a particular region or across all our regions? I can get an indication of sort of the frequency that this alert would fire so that I'm not spamming people. I can adjust the criteria, but then create sort of the alert content that I want to send out to them. So I can obviously choose the medium, whether it's email, phone alert, SMS. I can customize the subjects and the messages around that, but I can also customize the what we call payload for this alert. So what do I want to send people when this alert fires? Is it the metric, or is it perhaps a dashboard that shows the details behind this? And so when I set up the alert, I can start then sending these to users by, for example, email. So in this case, this user, we found an issue with daily sales. This user was linked to a particular region for daily sales. We can send them the alert from the metric. And again, as I just mentioned, the associated maybe dashboard pre-filtered to what generated the alert that shows the details that they can drill into and look at in more detail. One final thing with the alerting as well is I can tie it to what we call a workflow. So as I generated that alert, if I just go back to my screen here, if it's critical enough that I want to sort of track the outcome of what happened with this alert, I can tie it to what we call a workflow. A workflow basically sets a number of statuses that might be associated with the alert, and you can define your own. But more importantly, it assigns it to someone or people within the organization. And by doing that, when I send the alert out to them, it can do things like, if I just move my toolbar here, it can do things like require them to acknowledge that they've seen the alert, potentially set different statuses or comment on what's happened. And so you end up with sort of this audit trail of what's happened with the alert. Has it been acknowledged? Who's it been assigned to? Have any comments been added into that? When we trigger alerts as well on metrics, and we find issues with the data, like in this case, this statistical anomaly, one other thing we can do, and I think I spotted a question on this, which is why I'm touching on it, but if I've misread the question, I'll come back to it at the end. We can also see what else was affected at the same time by this metric. So we might have seen that sort of sales had an anomaly, either in an individual region or at a total level. I can also see what are the metrics or what are the dimensional values were affected at the same point in time. So if sales tanked on this particular day, which other regions were affected and which other metrics were affected around the same sort of time. And these are things that I can overlay onto the chart. They may be sort of causational or correlations with the issue that I'm seeing, and I can look at that easily and see what happened. So metrics are one way of thinking about anomalies, so outliers in time series data. Another way of thinking about it is if we go back to our Tableau dashboard that we were looking at before, it's not uncommon to see dashboards like this. So, multiple metrics, lots of different filter values. Even within our demo data set, we probably got 1,000 different combinations of filter values across countries, channels, products over here. I don't want to have to come in every day and filter out by all these different areas. So We can also look for sort of exceptions and changes between sort of snapshots of a dashboard. So in this case, this is a daily dashboard. It's updating each day. Metric Insights can start to snapshot the data and all the filter combinations behind this every day. And I can start to create rules that say, okay, let's look for changes between today and yesterday. And it can be numerical things like show me all the combinations of filter values where sales drop more than 50%. Or it could be non-numerical, show me things that changed in status between yesterday and today. Or exceptions within the current snapshot, show me all filter values where sales was greater than X. Metric Insights can perform that analysis. It can bring back the exceptions, in this case, on a daily basis and tie them to the underlying dashboard. So as a user, I can simply jump by clicking on the exception, jump to the dashboard pre-filtered by that particular exception. Or I may choose to receive this in my email. So again, by clicking on the envelope, I can choose to receive those exceptions every day in an email, again, potentially with an image of what the related dashboard looks like, pre-filtered to each of those exceptions. And if I click on them again, it would take me into that particular dashboard pre-filtered to that combination. So the idea is that we can, again, start to help users understand, if there's 20 different dashboards, 30 different dashboards that I might be interested in every day, which are the ones that I should focus on, which are the ones that I should pay attention to because we found unusual values in the data. One other way of displaying this content is through what we call portal pages. So what we've been looking at all along is this catalog view of content. So this sort of library view. There's a lot of content in here, even as sort of a restricted user. I can start to create what we call portal pages for users, and these are the tabs up the top here. So this is the ability to think of this as sort of a blank canvas of information. A blank canvas that I want to drop different content and different information onto from different tools for a particular type of user. So in this case, I might be creating a portal page for my sales management. I've dropped some metrics on here that they might be interested in for their region. I've dropped our exception report that we've been looking at. I've dropped a Tableau dashboard that shows some interesting stuff. Again, this is a live dashboard. I've dropped a Power BI dashboard onto the canvas, again live, and some additional sort of metric insights tables down the bottom. And so the idea is that, for your business users, if there's a set of content that they're looking at on a regular basis, and this is really what they're focused on, I can have this as a sort of landing page for them that they come into when they access the portal, and obviously give them access to the catalog as well if they want to search for other content. This is something Ben mentioned up front. We've been engaged with a lot of customers this week who, more than ever, need to keep track of sort of the key metrics within their business. And so we've been busy this week sort of creating portal pages for our customers, and particularly at sort of the exec high-level management level, where different operational metrics they're looking at intraday or daily. They want a single page where those users can come and access those metrics. And so examples are like the thing here, where across the different departments, we want to keep track of key metrics and how they're changing day over day, if not hour over hour. So something we've been doing this week is creating these portal pages for users, for customers. They're being published across the management teams, and this is proving helpful. Customers don't have to drill into complex dashboards. We're just bubbling up the key metrics. They're all on the same page, and they're all keeping track of things that are relevant at this point in time. A couple of other pieces of functionality before we transition to questions. I've noticed a few come in. As it particularly relates to the portal itself, we looked at sort of restricting content based on permissions within the organization. So typically the way this initially gets set up is, again, we'll sync up with your security models. Users are typically only seeing and searching for stuff that they have access to. However, you can choose to make content what we call discoverable. And when we do that, basically it means that when a user searches for content that they don't have access to, it may mean that they see things like this, where it's a piece of content that's been made discoverable, it's been published to the portal, but it's blurred out with a lock because I don't actually have access to this piece of content. By doing that, if a user clicks on something like that, it can go into an access request workflow. So that could be as simple as requesting access from the owners of this content, or it could even sort of update the security model for you automatically to give them access, put them in the right AD group or something like that. So, you know, depending on the type of content, you may want to make it discoverable, so people who don't have access, who find it, who are interested in it, can request access. Another key thing to the portal is that we are also tracking all the usage of not only metric insights, but the content that we're pulling into the portal and users are accessing through metric insights. And with that, we're able to essentially track this usage. And so this is used really from two perspectives. One is it's used to obviously understand what content is and isn't being used and how users are engaging with it. And so we can do things like show, you know, what's the most popular dashboards and reports, what's increasing in popularity, what isn't being used, what's decreasing in popularity, and you can drill into the details of these stats. Or even things like, what are users searching for? You know, are they finding content related to what they're searching for, or are they not? And using this to really keep the environment clean. Ben talked about the BI mess up front. We don't want to recreate the mess. We want to ensure that we're just publishing content that's useful to these users and retiring stuff that isn't. But we can also use this content to help the users themselves. And a couple of examples of that is, you know, similar to what we're just looking at here for discoverability. You know, users maybe don't know what's being published to the portal every week. So, you know, be able to promote content in this way, the content that was added to the portal in the last week that I haven't looked at as a user. But in this case, I have permissions to see or request access to. And I can see that easily either through a page like this or within my email. Or recommend content to me. You know, we know who's looking at what, we know what's available to this user. Here's 3 dashboards that were particularly popular in the groups of users that you belong to, but that you haven't looked at yet. You may want to go and take a look at these, and it may be something that's useful to you. So we can use that sort of audit trail of usage to make sure that, again, we're promoting content. If stuff isn't being used, you know, we can understand whether it's because we're not promoting it or whether it's not useful and we need to retire it. So with that, we like to keep these to sort of 45 minutes. So I want to leave time for questions. Yeah, that gives you sort of the overview. So again, to summarize, the organization of content, the distribution of content, and making sure we're focusing users on what's important. And I'm going to stop sharing here briefly and hand it back to you, Ben, to bring up the last couple of slides. And once you do that, I'm going to check out the questions and we'll come back to them.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Yeah, so let me share this final slide. So wrapping things up, we hope that was helpful to everyone. But wrapping things up, I know we kind of briefly mentioned, you know, what we're doing in response to the COVID-19 crisis, both for customers and prospects. Times are tough right now, right? So naturally, we want to help out. So we're actually offering a pilot of our functionality around the COVID-19 crisis just to help folks manage through this time, keep track of key operational metrics, how they're being affected by the crisis. Many times it's, an executive portal landing page for your top line executives to land and see how everything is sitting, how things are affected, where their focus should be, how they should react. So we're offering a pilot of our functionality, especially around the COVID-19 crisis, for free to anyone who's interested. So if at all interested, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is right there. We'll also be sending out the recording as well as kind of a wrap-up email, so you'll have all of our contact information. But yeah, we would love to have a discussion with you if interested around your specific use cases, where you need help, draw some things up for you and see if they'd help.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So we do have some questions here. Hopefully I've answered some of them as we go through, but I'll touch on them all again briefly. Excuse me. So does it work with Power BI? Yes, it does. Our Power BI plugin effectively works in the way that you've seen today. So we can connect to content, pick up images, we can connect to data in Power BI, whether that's data sets or through reports directly. Yes, we work with that tool. Can you show why an anomaly happened and the variables by segments behind the Y answer? So again, for metrics, we do that to some extent. So as we find anomalies, say with something like sales, we can show the related components, say regions or products that were affected in a similar way when we found that anomaly. So you can drill down and overlay those things. So there's different ways that you can look for sort of the causation of a particular issue that we find. A couple of related questions here. Can you tool burst a single tab Power BI dashboard to multiple pages in a PDF and Excel based on a single grouping, much like how reporting services can burst based on a group? So if I'm getting you right, yes, we can. We can dimension this content or sort of pre-filter this content based on filters that exist in Power BI, and essentially pick up images for each of the filter values. Those images can be included in the email, or, and this is related to the next question as well, they can be exported into a different format like PDF. When we burst something like PDF or Excel, where we're picking up the data, you can deliver that obviously to a user via email. You can deliver it to essentially an FTP site or file share as well. So if you're capturing those and exporting them into another format, we can place them in a online FTP folder or a file share folder. And a question, you mentioned your solution, I think this came in earlier, is able to pick up anomalies. How does that work? Hopefully that was clear. So whether it's time series looking for outliers with alert rules, or whether it's more exception-based, looking for changes between data sets, that's really how we focus on that. And then how you use that is down to you. Do you want to alert people via email or the phone? Do you want it purely as informational that you include on the chart? You have the ability to define that. Can MI embed forecasts in the anomaly detection notifications? So a forecast, so we do some sort of projections, basic projections on metrics. So you can do basic sort of linear regression or historical projections on the metrics. You can also pull in, if you have sort of forecasts that you're generating, targets that you're generating, you can pull those in and overlay them on the metric. Rules can compare against forecasts, but yes, if you have those forecast values, you can pull them in and send them out alongside them. For source dashboard created for a website, do the tiles reformat for the mobile view? So we have mobile apps on iOS and Android. that's basically a mobile version of the portal. So, you know, obviously you don't want lots of tiles on the page in the way that you see them through the browser. It reformats all that for the mobile app and optimizes it for that. When you drill through on a tile that is linked to a third-party source like Tableau or Power BI from the mobile app, by default, we take that image that we capture and we and use the dashboard that looks like. If you have the mobile app of that technology, so for example, when I have the file into but you know, in general, for mobile, we try and optimize it for the mobile device. A question around sort of how the free demo helps with the crisis. Really, again, this is about, you know, us bubbling up to KPIs, bubbling up KPIs for execs. We're able to create KPI tiles for execs. We're publishing those through a single portal page, so users have one place to go to access those KPIs. They're not, you know, struggling. Everyone's reading off the same page. You know, particularly depending on the business, it's particularly around sort of financials and HR situation, that sort of thing. But really, it's about, you know, making sure we're creating those key KPI metric tiles and pushing them out to through a portal page and through email to execs. So, you know, these guys and gals are meeting on a daily or intraday basis to discuss what's going on, and they want to make sure they're all on the same page. Lots of good questions. Thank you. I think so. Last call for questions if anyone has any. I think that's probably it. So we're coming up against 50 minutes. Thank you all again very much for taking the time and joining us at these busy times and giving us your attention. We really appreciate it. As Ben mentioned, if there is any interest in looking at us further or trying this stuff out, then we're here to help. Please reach out to Ben and we'll get you going. And thanks, Ben, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time. Healthy.
Bye.